Following the political upheaval of 22 BC, sparked by the bitter rivalry between 21 BC consular candidates Quintus Aemilius Lepidus and Lucius Junius Silanus, Caesar Augustus departed from Sicily, setting sail for Anatolia. As the princeps civitatus prepared to tour the eastern provinces, taking with him the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, the elections for the 20 BC consulship took place without violence. Marcus Appuleius, the second son of Caesar's half-sister Octavia, and Publius Silius Nerva, both partisans of Caesar Augustus, were named to the consulship. The following year, the 19 BC consulship saw only a single candidate elected to the office. For reasons unknown, Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus became the second man to be designated consul without a colleague, since the Roman Senate had granted the office to Pompeius Magnus in 52 BC. Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus was the son of the Sentius Saturninus who had supported Sextus Pompeius on the island of Sicily. In 40 BC, Sextus Pompeius, who was considered an outlaw and pirate, had dispatched an envoy of senators to Athens to negotiate a potential alliance with Marcus Antonius. Saturninus's father was among the notable crowd, which included Livia Drusilla, her first husband Tiberius Claudius Nero, and Pompeius's father-in-law Lucius Scribonius Libo. After Antonius refused an alliance with Sextus Pompeius, the Sentii Saturnini turned their loyalties to Caesar Divi Filius, who then retained the family's allegiance throughout the course of the civil war. Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus regarded his singular 19 BC consulship as a distinguished office to be handled with much seriousness, as had the republican consuls of old. In keeping with his principled approach, he opened an investigation into alleged corruption on the part of Rome's tax collectors. Exposing this corruption, the guilty tax collectors were punished by legal means, with most of their ill-gotten gains being put back into Rome's coffers, where they belonged. But, in spite of proving himself a man with a steady hand at the helm of government, Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus began to have problems with a populist politician and budding demagogue by the name of Marcus Ignatius Rufus. Ignatius Rufus was a novus homo, or new man, who quickly became popular with the Roman people during his 22 BC plebeian aedileship. As Marcus Claudius Marcellus had impressed the Roman people while curule aedile in 23 BC, covering the Forum Romanum in a spectacular multicolored marquee, Ignatius Rufus thought to capitalize on his office by appealing to the popular desire for city safety. Using 600 of his personal slaves, and adding to their number by purchasing even more slaves with his own money, Marcus Ignatius Rufus assembled a type of city fire brigade. With the wooden tenement buildings of the Subura a constant fire hazard, Ignatius's contribution of firefighters meant an improved response to infernos that threatened Roman lives. Ignatius Rufus's fire brigade differed from previous fire brigades, such as had belonged to the first triumvir Marcus Licinius Crassus. Whereas Ignatius presented firefighting as a matter of civic duty, Crassus' apparent attempts to fight Rome's fires were motivated by a desire for personal gain, the financial benefit that accompanied coercing tenement owners to sell their burning buildings to him at a tremendous loss. Having seized on the public spirit, the popularity of Marcus Ignatius Rufus reached such a zenith in 22 BC that in 21 BC the Roman people elected him to the 20 BC praetorship, no matter that his 20 BC praetorship was illegal, in total disregard of the constitutional reforms laid down by the dictator Sulla. Ignatius Rufus was not of legal age, but he was the choice of the people. We know little of the mysterious methods he used to sway the populace, but Ignatius Rufus continued to capture the affections of the Roman electorate throughout his illegitimate 20 BC praetorship. He even managed a senatorial move to reimburse himself from the state treasury the personal funds he had invested in creating the fire brigade. At the end of his praetorship, Marcus Ignatius Rufus boasted that he was handing back the city in perfect condition, a transparent jab at Caesar Augustus, who had permitted an insurrection against Rome's Senate and who had watched complacently from Sicily while the Forum Romanum devolved into chaos. Riding high on his immense popularity, Ignatius Rufus then proclaimed his intention to pass directly from his praetorship into the consulship for the 18 BC year. And why shouldn't he? After all, he was only imitating the example set forth by Caesar Augustus in the appointments of his stepson Tiberius and his nephew Marcellus, ignoring the legal requirements meant to impede too speedy an ascension up the cursus honorum. But the defender of old ideals, the punctilious Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus, in his role as overseer of elections, refused to accept the consular candidacy of Marcus Ignatius Rufus on the grounds that he was not of legal age to hold the office, and because the appropriate number of years had not passed between his praetorship and his running in the consular election. However, by the sovereign and spontaneous will of the Roman people, Caesar Augustus had won consulship after consulship, flouting all the same laws. And so, the law notwithstanding, Ignatius Rufus announced he would continue his run for the consulship. Sentius Saturninus, however, would not be silenced, and responded by decreeing that should Ignatius Rufus come down to the Forum Romanum on the day of the elections, and offer his name, despite official rejection of his candidacy, Saturninus would use the full weight of his consular authority against Ignatius Rufus. Ignatius Rufus believed that his consular candidacy was being rejected on secret instructions from Caesar Augustus, who had made it clear over the previous years that he would brook no competition for the love of the Roman people. Marcus Ignatius Rufus then engineered the third plot to assassinate Rome's first citizen. As with the assassination plot of 30 BC, which had been led by the son of Marcus Aemilius Lepidus Pontifex Maximus, and the 22 BC assassination plot involving Varro Murena and Caepio, few details surrounding the Ignatius conspiracy are left to us. We know only that Ignatius Rufus had no difficulty finding like-minded co-conspirators who also objected to the obvious double standard. Caesar Augustus was permitted to break the law, the rest of Rome was not. As with the other plots, word soon got out. Going before the Senate, the consul Sentius Saturninus apprised the conscript fathers of the impending threat to Caesar Augustus' life. The Senate responded by passing a Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the first to be passed since just before Julius Caesar had crossed the Rubicon River 30 years earlier. From that time forward, Rome had ceased using the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, instead employing various crisis powers such as Julius Caesar's perpetual dictatorship and the triumvirate of Caesar, Antonius and Lepidus. Now, with the Senate seemingly in control again, the Senatus Consultum Ultimum was enacted, and Sentius Saturninus, as in the days before the civil wars, was given full autonomy in dealing with the threat to the Republic. Marcus Ignatius Rufus and his fellow conspirators were all taken into custody. After being briefly imprisoned, each man was executed on the orders of the consul. Although Saturninus successfully put down the plot to assassinate Caesar Augustus upon his return to the city, likely saving Augustus' life, the princeps civitatus could not have been pleased with the outcome. Sentius Saturninus had demonstrated to the Roman people that he could handle a crisis without the help of Caesar Augustus nor his legions, and without pressuring the Senate into granting him a bevy of otherwise unconstitutional powers to do so. By trusting the traditional old-fashioned republican processes, Sentius Saturninus had successfully averted a disaster, proving to the Roman people that law and order could be maintained without the use of dictatorial or extraordinary military power, the instruments of authority which Caesar Augustus had favored since bursting onto the political stage in the aftermath of Julius Caesar's murder. Sentius Saturninus had also used his consular authority to deny the Roman people the right to vote Marcus Ignatius Rufus to the consulship. If Saturninus could do that once, he could do it twice, and Caesar Augustus, upon his eventual return to the city, might find himself no longer voted the great honours and governmental offices to which he had become accustomed, governmental offices which protected Caesar Augustus from being prosecuted for the very many laws he had broken throughout his multiple crisis commands. The handwriting was on the wall. Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus had to go. Although we are not told by what legal means it was accomplished, Gnaeus Sentius Saturninus was formally removed from his consular office sometime after the 1st of Sextilis in 19 BC. He was replaced by two suffect consuls, Quintus Lucretius Vespillo and Marcus Vinicius, both coincidentally partisans of Caesar Augustus. Vespillo was an older conservative senator whose family had been involved in the civil wars since the very beginning. His father had been proscribed by the dictator Lucius Cornelius Sulla, and he himself had been later proscribed by the Second Triumvirate. Vespillo survived the proscriptions through the tireless efforts of his wife, Curia, who kept him hidden within the crawl space of their home for the weeks, or possibly months, that it took for her to secure a pardon for him, a pardon likely purchased with a promise of allegiance. Marcus Vinicius was an equite supporter of Caesar Augustus, who had fought with the Princeps Civitatis in Hispania and Gallia Narbonensis during the 25 BC year campaigns, and was counted among Caesar Augustus's most trusted friends. With the threat of assassination removed, the consulship out of the hands of a man who might use it against him, and his much publicized tour of the eastern provinces a roaring success, Caesar Augustus was finally ready to come home.